Welcome to another episode of Shots from the Winchester podcast, where we explore leadership topics from a variety of perspectives. This podcast is brought to you by Greencastle Consulting, your nation's premier strategy execution firm. Welcome to another episode of Shots from the Winchester, brought to you by Greencastle Consulting, your nation's premier strategy execution firm. I'm your host, Al Green, and today we're going to have a conversation with Andrew Cheadle. He's a consultant here at Greencastle. He just did a deep dive into the subject matter that we're going to talk about today at a lunch and learn that we have here at Greencastle pretty much every Friday.
Yep.
Right? So our conversation today is going to be around strategic procrastination. And that's the idea that delaying certain tasks on purpose can sometimes enhance creativity, clarity, or outcomes. But before we jump into that, we have the Lunch and Learns on our Greencastle YouTube channel. And if you haven't gone over to that, go check it out, Greencastle on YouTube. You'll see some of the the Lunch and Learn content there. Yours is going to be up there pretty soon as well. So
cool.
Probably could be out before this one comes out. So definitely go there and check us out. Also, check us out on YouTube at Shots from the Winchester. We're also on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. Make sure you give us a like and subscribe so that we can get more content like this. All right. So without any further delay, let's jump into our conversation with Andrew. Why was strategic procrastination the thought that you had to jump into your Lunch and Learn?
I love starting off with this because I felt very strongly and deliberately about this. But at the time I was doing that Lunch and Learn, there were a set of topics that they said, hey, here's half a dozen topics you can choose from. And there were two main reasons I really like strategic procrastination as a topic. The first being that I liked that it was kind of a controversial idea, that you were taking the idea of something that universally throughout society we talk about being a negative thing, things that are going to be bad for the workplace, for work habits, procrastination. And now we're reorienting our perspective around it a little bit to say, hey, is there ever a time and a place this makes sense? The other second reason that I really liked it is that historically, I've always been a bad procrastinator. I got a lot better with my time in the Air Force. But growing up, it's funny, my mom still, teases me about it to this day. But growing up, a lot of kids, they come home from school and they're like, hey, let me knock out, my homework so that way I can, play or watch TV or whatever the rest of the day.
Right.
I would not do that. I would get home from school. I was like, thank God I'm done with that for the day. I'm going to run around outside. I'm going to watch TV, play video games. And then I would put it off, till right before bed, if I did it at all, or I'd be like cramming it the following morning before class would start. Right. So it was a topic that I felt personally that I felt like I understood pretty well, at least from, again, that negative standpoint.
Right. That's so funny you mentioned that because I'm a Gen Xer and I loved when I came home from school, all the best cartoons were on.
Yeah.
Like G.I. Joe, Transformers.
They know what they're doing with the programming.
Yeah, it's just like, this is it. I'm definitely doing that. So I always put my homework off until like later in the evening before I went to bed or something like that. Or first thing in the morning in homeroom.
Yeah. Yep. I did that more times than I could count.
Right.
Yeah. Even all the way up through college. I remember doing that, day of before class, you're looking at your watch and you're like, oh man, I got like 10 minutes until class. Let me cram this paper. And it really wasn't until I went into the military where that kind of got beaten out of me because it was finally introduced the idea of like, hey, this is not going to fly anymore. Right. So that fortunately I've gotten a lot better with that over time. I've learned a lot of helpful, habits to really mitigate that a lot. So even though I still get that impulse pretty frequently, it's now I have a lot more discipline and a lot more habits in place to prevent that from happening. Nice.
And we'll get into some of those ideas and those habits that may be helpful for some people out there, especially if you're a procrastinator, like the two of us, obviously, right? But before we get into that, you mentioned the Air Force. You mentioned some of your history. Could you give the audience a little bit of background on you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to college, did 4 years of Air Force ROTC. After that, I went to navigator training down in Pensacola for that. Nice. Did that for about a year and a half and then found out that I was picked up for special operations C-130s.
Wow.
So it was really great. It was exactly what I wanted to do. So I spent my time mainly between Florida and New Mexico, operating on those aircraft, doing a lot of really, really cool stuff, transporting a lot of cool people, equipment, going to a lot of austere places around the world, deploying a couple times, working with great groups of people. But the thing I really loved about that was it was so every day you were doing something different. A lot of different aircraft have one single mission that they do. And the whole point of ours was that we could do a lot of different things between flying low altitude, doing airdrop, doing air land, landing, on dirt strips, doing air-to-air refueling, both receiving and giving. So it was just a variety that you were constantly doing. So it was never a dull day.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, you've been here at Greencastle for how long now?
About a year, exactly. So I did the Skill Bridge program starting last November. Did that for about 6 months, and now I've been here for about 6 months as a full-time W-2 employee. So,
sweet, man. Glad to have you.
Yeah, I'm ecstatic to be here. So thanks.
That's great. Let's jump into some of these pros and cons of strategic procrastination. All right, so I pulled some of these from chat because I wanted to just see what chat had to say about pros and cons of this whole thing. So what they put out was some of the pros, and we can have a conversation around this. Some of the pros are encourages creative insight. Ideas can mature during those downtimes, and I think that's pretty accurate. A lot of times I do what I call I don't call it. It's actually a whole thing, the Pomodoro effect.
Yep.
Where I'll work for like half an hour and then I'll stop and I'll kind of play my video game for like 5 to 10 minutes or something like that. And in between that time, I have these ideas like I'm still thinking about this. And I'm like, ooh, I can change that edit to this. I can use this graphic instead by the time I get back to it. So it's good. But a con from that is risk of missing deadlines or rushing to complete tasks, which can be a hardship for people. I'm sure like if you're rushing at the end, sometimes the product doesn't come out as good as it could be.
Of course, yeah.
Another one is allows prioritization or of more important or urgent work first. Okay, so basically you're prioritizing your workload differently, and the urgency is kind of a confusion for you. Or as a con, increase stress and anxiety as deadlines approach, which definitely can happen.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you're like...
Any of us who are the natural procrastinators know that feeling of the panic and the regret of why didn't I start this sooner?
Right, exactly. And then that definitely, and what's worse is that like once you do it, it only took 5 minutes, and it's just like, I could have done this any time and not been stressed out right now.
Exactly,
but it just took me like 5 minutes. But now I got people clamoring and asking me where it's at, Another pro is can prevent perfectionism by reducing overthinking early on, which I think is pretty accurate. If you're overthinking it, you could also end up not producing a good product at the same time. And then something else to balance that out, quality may suffer if inefficient time is left for the execution, which also makes sense.
Yep.
Let's see, one more pro here. Promotes reflection, which can lead to better problem solving, which I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm feeling it for the pros, honestly, because that's where I kind of live in the pros. The cons, not so much, obviously. But the con to that is can form into a habit of avoidance rather than strategy.
Yep.
That's something that we want to avoid. But, you have books like Atomic Habits, which is a good look to kind of understand how to habit stack. And I think that helps in a lot of ways for preventing the avoidance from sticking. And then the last one may align with incubation periods in creative work or research, which I think also is a good look.
Absolutely, yeah.
The con for that is hard to distinguish from regular procrastination without discipline.
Yep.
Yeah.
I really love this pros and cons list because when you sent this to me the other day, I was looking over it and it really distills kind of the whole point of the Lunch and Learn presentation that I had is that there are very clear benefits that you could have from strategic procrastination. There are also risks and pitfalls with it. And the entire idea being, how do we capitalize on those benefits while minimizing and mitigating those risks?
Right.
Because I think this list is really interesting because they're not mutually exclusive with these things. You could realize that pro while avoiding that con if you're very deliberate and very intentional about how you're going about your strategic procrastination.
Right.
A really good example that I like in here is we'll go with the last one that we said, that may align with incubation periods in creative work or research. So one of the big things I found from my research, and there's a variety of different times where the strategic procrastination can be really valuable, but a lot of research has gone into the creative and innovative side of it. So the idea being that someone comes and hands you this big challenge and says, I need you to come up with a solution to it. And it's not something where you can look at a spreadsheet or facts and figures and come to a solution. It's something where you have to come up with an idea in order to solve that problem. So it's not something you can fire from the hip and say like, oh, here's what we're going to do. This is going to be our solution. You need to think about it. But then the con with it is it's hard to distinguish from regular procrastination without discipline, the key word being discipline.
Right.
So are we going to put this task off and kind of let our subconscious mind process it in the background and try to come up with ideas? Or is this more of, I'm just avoiding this because this seems like I'm having negative emotions and feelings surrounding this big project that I was given.
Right.
It seems like it's going to be a lot of work. It's inducing a lot of anxiety, and I'm just purely avoiding those feelings. So that's where the discipline and the self-honesty comes into play. So if this is something where you're saying, hey, I'm going to take a knee with this, I'm going to kind of put it off while I do some other things, process it in the background, kind of you were saying about your Pomodoro technique, that can be effective, but you have to be honest about the situation and not just say, that we, like we said about the non-productive procrastination that we are susceptible to, but the idea that I'm going to table this for now, but I'm going to set a trigger to return me to this task later on, something to come back to it. It's not just me saying I'm going to put it off and I'm going to go watch TV for 4 hours because I don't feel like dealing with these emotions.
Right, yeah. And that's a lot of it too, because I feel like when it comes to procrastination, some people take in the negativity of the experience of what it is they're trying to do. Yeah. And, if there's any animosity, hot takes involved in it, then you're just kind of like, I don't want to do that. I don't feel like having to experience that right now. I don't want to be stressed out.
Yeah, so maybe it's an uncomfortable conversation with someone. Maybe you even know what the right answer is, but it's just the matter of, I need to go tell someone they're doing something wrong or something. And maybe you even already have the solution and you're just avoiding an uncomfortable confrontation.
Right.
And again, that's one of those situations where it's like, okay, in that situation, the delay is not a good thing. It's what needs to be done. You're just avoiding uncomfortable situations.
Right. Especially in that scenario where the longer you wait, the more it festers. Yeah. Especially in the mind of the person that you're trying to communicate with, which can also be a huge problem. Let's jump into some questions around this. So now you're pretty researched on it. I not only was I in the Lunch and Learn at the session, but I also have been editing that session too. So I'm very familiar with the content. I like the video that you put ahead of it. Could you explain a little bit about that since they're not watching it? Now, mind you, again, I already mentioned, go to the Greencastle YouTube channel and you can watch the video for yourself. But could you explain that video a little bit and why you used it?
For sure. Yeah, that was, I felt like I struck gold when I found that video because it was exactly what I was trying to get at. But it was a TED Talk from Professor Adam Grant. He's a professor he's had a few different of these TED Talks that have gone viral, but he's a professor at University of Pennsylvania. And basically he was talking about creativity and procrastination. So very much in line with, the whole topic of my Lunch and Learn. But he said about how they found anecdotally from certain students that they were saying, I have my best ideas, when I'm procrastinating. And, he said he was initially kind of dubious of this. And he was like, oh, okay, it sounds like it's just justification for bad work habits. But then they decided to do some research into it. And they actually found that was true, that again, taking that knee when you have these big endeavors that require a creative solution, giving yourself the time and the space from that big problem to step away allows you to start ideating. It allows you to start thinking creatively and considering solutions that you might not have otherwise considered. Because sometimes it's not even necessarily that I need to come up with an idea and I can't come up with one. Sometimes it's immediately someone presents, here's problem A, and you say, here's solution 1, and then you want to walk away from it and say it's good to go. But then maybe you think about it a little bit longer and you take more time with it and you realize, hey, that was a good first idea, but that's not actually going to fit the situation. Maybe now I'm coming up with another course of action and another one. And then you realize after you process it more and again take that time to think about it that maybe the third one is actually the best. Maybe it's the most efficient, the least convoluted, the most cost effective. And you never would have gotten to that point if you hadn't taken that extra time to think about the problem to begin with.
Nice, yeah. So how can delaying a task initially improve creativity or innovation?
Again, going back to the just giving yourself time to process that, because one of the things I really liked about this topic as well is there's actually a lot of scientific research that has been done about this, because multiple people, have different reasons why this is valuable. People in the workplace want to know, how do I get the most, the best product out of, my employees? People who suffer from negative procrastination want to understand why they're doing it. Why do we do something that seems so harmful to the workplace?
Right.
There's different reasons. So there's actually been a lot of, studies looking into that. But the real idea is, again, giving yourself that time to step away from it and to have that subconscious processing. Our brains are wired that way. And some people say they aren't, but the studies that you look into really point to this. And they say it's a part of our natural evolution, is the idea that, you can only survive if you anticipate the things that are coming down the road to get you, next. Like being present in the moment and having that situational awareness is great, but it's going to be the next thing that kills you and gets you, So our brains have literally evolved over time to think about that, so that we're wired in the background to be thinking about these big things. And over time, of course, it's no longer a life or death situation, but our brains have adapted to really think towards, other things that are causing us stress and anxiety, like some of those big creative endeavors. We had an expression we used all the time when I was in the Air Force, that we always said, "Let the cookies bake," which was really just that, it's an idiom that reflects that, of instead of making that knee-jerk, emotional reaction, let's think about it for a minute. Let's see if we come up with some better ideas and not rush a decision. So really, that's how you can become more creative in that regard.
That's a good look. Yeah, a lot of people, we talk about this a lot on the podcast, is like the having that control over your emotions. And having the ability to like think through a situation before you act, which can be detrimental if you're not paying attention in the moment, or just letting your emotions take control of you. Yeah. And I think with that as a balance, can make you a better person. Yeah.
One of the other huge factors related to this as well is it just provides time for you to get outside opinions and advice on things. Even if it's a situation where you feel like you're really informed on something,
right?
Maybe you want to say, hey, this is going to be this decision I make on this big, project or task or decision. But maybe you say, hey, give me a little bit to think about it. And then you walk over to your coworker's, cubicle or desk or office, and you say, hey, let me pick your brain about this for 5 minutes. And maybe from that 5-minute conversation, you get some huge insight on something that you weren't tracking previously. Right. And that changes the entire situation around what the best answer to that decision is.
Right. You're right. It's definitely good to get more information out of your colleagues, for sure. What distinguishes strategic procrastination from simply being unproductive?
Yeah, and this was great. I loved this question in here because it reminds me of one of the slides I had on my Lunch and Learn.
Yeah.
And on that Lunch and Learn, it was a column on the left of, the classic reasons that we think of people as being procrastinators, and it's things like laziness, bad work habits, the negative emotional avoidance that we talked about. But then I contrasted that with a column on the right-hand side of, valid reasons that you might have for procrastinating. Maybe you have a task before you where you don't have enough information to make a decision. Maybe it's a project of some kind of undertaking someone wants you to do, and you don't know what the definition of completion is. What is it exactly that you need me to accomplish with this? Maybe there's not a team put together for it. Maybe the right resources aren't in place for it. Those are all valid reasons why you might want to delay doing something, and you might not want to go off and waste all this time and energy on something that becomes irrelevant later on, or misunderstood later on. And the real crux between those two columns of the bad reasons and then the valid reasons is value being added by delaying. So I think that's what you really need to ask in those situations is, are we adding value? Is something going to improve over time by us delaying?
Right. Wow. Can waiting until closer to a deadline actually improve decision-making under pressure?
This one I'm going to actually say no to, because I think the key phrase in here from a lot of the research that I was doing that I kind of disagree with is the idea of under pressure necessarily, specifically for decision making. I still think it's good to give yourself time again for that subject matter expert solicitation, to just let your own judgment process things over time. But if you're putting it off to the point where now you're feeling a certain level of pressure on it, now you're more likely to do what you would have done in the first place of just made a knee-jerk emotional reaction to the decision. So I think the caveat I would say for that is it's good to give yourself time, but if you're feeling that panicked situation that we talked about that we've both experienced before, at the end, it's not worthwhile to begin with, and you've just wasted a lot of time. So I'd say it's good to give yourself the time, but make sure you have enough time at the end to not be panicked and to make like an informed, educated decision.
Right. What would you say to those people that are out there saying like, I work great under pressure?
Yeah, so that and on one of my slides, I had a point about this, and it's funny. There's something called the Yerkes-Dodson law, and it's been, I think it was like 120 years ago that this was discovered, and I thought this was kind of fascinating. And it says that for every person, and everybody's different on this, there's a spectrum regarding this, but there is an optimal level of external pressure that you can put on somebody in order to generate their best performance. So for some people, they need very little in the way of that pressure to do a great job. And some people do need actually a lot of extra pressure put on them. So there is actually some truth to that that's backed up by science that talks about the Yerkes-Dodson law. The big caveat is, and I've been guilty of this before, that I've said the same thing, is a lot of times the non-productive procrastinators do use that as a crutch to justify their poor work habits.
Makes sense.
And they're not actually doing it to generate an optimal level of performance. They're doing it because they're just avoiding the process, and then they're going to end up in that situation where they're panicked at the end and just kind of doing a terrible job at the last possible minute.
And they think they sound tough by saying that they work great under pressure.
And one of the and it's funny because sometimes you hear people say that, the procrastinators say that, and it's not only them lying to other people, but they're honestly lying to themselves about it because they're trying to justify their behavior to themselves. I've done that a million times myself where in the aftermath, I'm like, why did I convince myself that was the best thing to do? Because it definitely wasn't. And it's us trying to justify bad behavior to ourselves to do what we really want to do. And I think that's another really key component of the strategic procrastination. If you're going to execute this to benefit from those creative insights, you need to be really, really hyper honest with yourself and about the situation, and really ask, is this an appropriate time to do this? Am I the appropriate kind of person to do this? Or is this likely to go off the rails and lead to problems?
Right. It's funny. I made up this thing called constructive laziness. For myself. Basically what it is like I just get the job done early so that later I can just chill.
It's great because it's like a mental way of framing things that really combats the idea of procrastinating. It's still effective, but you're saying, hey, I get more time later where I'm going to be less stressed out, so I might as well do it now.
It's basically just a narrative shift. But it's it helps me thinking, okay, well, I like playing video games. I like playing with my daughter and her toys and stuff like that, and like hanging out with my wife and everything. How can I get more time to do that? Best thing to do is get whatever you need to get done. So it's not hanging over your head or in the back of your mind, distracting you from having the time that you want to have. Just get it done. Get the job done.
It's incredibly effective. It's the way we rationalize and justify things, it frames our worldview, but it also frames our behaviors. And it's it really is extremely powerful, the way that you can tell yourself, here's how I'm either going to use my mental state to justify bad work habits and bad behaviors, or the opposite, like you're saying, of here's how I'm going to look at a certain situation to incentivize myself to do the responsible thing, because ultimately it's going to benefit me and my family in the long run anyway.
Right. Absolutely. So in what situations does strategic procrastination backfire and lead to stress or lower quality work?
So I think this is a good segue from the previous one, because again, it's all about, is this the right situation? Am I the right person? Am I being honest about what's going on? And asking, is this a situation where I would really benefit from it? Again, is this some big nebulous task that was put before me? I don't really have a good idea for an answer. That is a more valid time where this would make sense, to employ this technique. But if someone comes to you and says, hey, I have a bunch of data here, I need you to clean it in Excel, and I need you to generate like a Power BI report for it. in that situation, you're not really going to probably gain much by delaying and putting it off, because you're just going to be avoiding, I don't want to crunch all the numbers. I don't want to go and create different formula. Like, you know what I mean?
Right,
it's like sometimes the work is just the work, and you need to be honest about that and get after that.
Right.
I think the other huge component is that if it is a situation where you would benefit from, strategic procrastination, is making sure that you're being very deliberate and intentional all the time about how you're going to realize these benefits. So I talked briefly earlier about having a trigger to return to something.
Right.
We all know as the non-productive procrastinators, you'll table something, that homework, and you're never telling yourself, hey, I just got home from school, I'm tired, I'm going to give myself an hour or two before I get that done. You're just going to put it off indefinitely, and that's why you end up the following morning doing it, in homeroom before the, class frantically. Right. So that's a huge part of it. Is identifying a trigger, what's going to make me return to it. Is it a literal alarm that I have on my phone that I'm going to do this after lunch? Is it maybe it's an email I'm waiting for from someone associated with the project that's going to provide more insight, but you need to have a way to return to it. You need to make sure you have a way that you're going to capture insights as your subconscious is processing that in the background. So when you have an idea, you need to be able to write it down and record it. You don't want it to just be lost in your head. Another huge aspect too is making sure that you're not putting something off and still working on another huge project in the foreground.
Right.
Because I talk about this in my Lunch and Learn, but the idea that if you're going to take a high cognitive problem and put it off in the background and let your brain process it a bit, in the foreground, you want to be doing low cognitive things so that you're allowing your mind to wander and drift and focus on that bigger thing in the background. Right. So that could be a more structured style of procrastination. So you're doing low cognitive tasks like organizing your inbox or something like that doesn't require a lot of heavy thought. Or you could just be kind of goofing off, taking a break, walking around your home or playing an instrument for a little bit and just kind of dabbling on that. But the idea being that you don't want to put something off to prioritize all these other huge issues, because then your brain's not going to have that extra bandwidth to process it in the background.
Right.
And then lastly, another really good example, and this kind of ties into the first one again with the triggered return, is not leaving yourself enough time to actually do the work at the end of it. So again, if you're saying, I'm strategically procrastinating and it's some huge project and you say, I'm going to return to this the night before it's due, that's not a recipe for success.
It's not a good strategy.
Yeah. So it's all of these things of combining these different considerations and being really deliberate about what you're doing to make sure that you have a good plan where you can actually realize the benefits. But if you're just saying, I'm putting that thing off, and then you're trying to justify it and say, this is healthy behavior that I'm strategically procrastinating, it's no, you're going to have a bad time.
Right. You're misusing the title there. Yeah, for sure. How does personality type, i.e. perfectionist versus spontaneous, influence whether strategic procrastination is effective?
I really like this question too, because it goes back to a lot of the research that has been done over the years. And I thought this one piece is fascinating. But a lot of studies have shown that when you look at the ideal, not ideal, but the type of people who are the chronic procrastinators, who are the most likely to procrastinate, it's actually the perfectionists, which seems counterintuitive, right? Because you would think if you want to generate a perfect product, you would get started early and you would make sure that everything's squared away.
Yeah.
But it's the opposite. The perfectionists put huge pressure on themselves that I want to generate an optimal thing. I don't want anyone to see any mistakes in it. And that level of stress now ironically forces you to put off the task because you have all these negative emotions surrounding it. And then again, ironically, a lot of these perfectionists at the last minute can't generate a perfect product because they did not leave themselves enough time for it.
Right.
So people that are usually more accepting of them producing a product that's 80% of the way there are the kind of people that won't procrastinate. So I would actually say that if you are that person with perfectionistic tendencies and you have trouble with procrastinating in general, you're more of like an at-risk column for maybe you're not the ideal audience for strategic procrastination, because again, it's a slippery slope where you might start out with the best intentions and say, I'm going to be deliberate, I'm going to be intentional and honest with myself in the situation. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you find yourself on hour 5 of playing Minecraft or whatever your vice is, So, so it's I'd say for the perfectionist, it's a slippery slope. And then if you're the more kind of spontaneous person, you're more the ideal audience, because you're the person whose natural instinct is more to, again, fire from the hip, do the knee-jerk emotional reaction to a situation. And the strategic procrastination forces you again to get that space from the problem to really think about other ideas and to process the situation more fully.
Nice. Wow, that's a great breakdown.
Yeah, I loved that question because again, it's this topic was really fascinating to me because there's a lot of hard science that has been done into the psychology of who procrastinates, why do we procrastinate, what is the engineering behind that. So I found that really fascinating.
And I thought it would be a great conversation to have also on the podcast because everyone procrastinates.
Yeah.
And it's got to have some kind of benefit to our audience to understand some value that you can get from it. Also understanding the cons from it, the pros and the cons from it, but also recognizing that this could be strategically used in the right way.
Yeah, of course.
If used in the right way.
Again, you go to a situation where someone says, and I've seen this before, especially in school, I saw this a lot in college. And high school and that kind of thing, not as much in the military, but you would get a group project where the professor would start out and say, hey, this is a semester-long group project that you're going to work on, this team effort. And then there's always that one person in the group that is the minute after the assignment is released is like, guys, when are we meeting up and we're going to work on this and we're going to get it done 3 months early. And to an extent, it's like that seems responsible at a surface level, and it can be because you want to make sure you get the project done, but you also want to make sure that you're giving yourself time to not rush something, and then you realize with all that remaining time to spare, we could have done a much better job at this. There's maybe a certain type of technology we could have leveraged that we didn't use, or maybe there's a different, more creative approach that we could have taken that would have resulted in a better final product. So it's very interesting because I think to your point, everybody procrastinates to an extent, but it's just on different things. Some people are very good about work and school things. And I hear this all the time. And sometimes they're the ones who shame other people that they'll say, oh, I got, that project done 3 months early. And then you go and you look and you're like, oh man, you have, 4 weeks of laundry piled up in your apartment. Why is that? And then, I didn't have time. And it's like, you're telling me you didn't have time in the last month to do a single load of laundry. So it's funny that everybody has certain things that they'll put off because they have a certain negative emotional reaction towards it. And if you're the kind of person that never happens to you, I give you all the kudos in the world, and I'm very jealous. For the rest of us, we put things off.
Definitely, we all do. Last question I have for this: what strategies can help someone identify which tasks are safe to delay and which must be tackled immediately? Gotcha.
Yeah, and I think this is a really great wrap-up question too, because it really summarizes a lot of the different things that we've talked about already. But the idea of what is the timeline? Maybe sometimes it is a question where someone says, here's this problem, I need an answer in the next 5 minutes. Obviously, you don't want to wait until you have 12 seconds left until you're like, all right, that was my micro strategic procrastination, maybe before I start looking at this problem. So first of all, does the timeline allow for it? Sometimes, again, things are, quick turn and you just got to do the work and you got to get it out of the way. And then other things, and then other times you have things where it's, I've got, a couple months to work on this or a few weeks, and I've got a little bit of time to delay. So that the timeline is hugely important. I think the second part, again, is this something that requires creativity or innovation, or is this something that is going to improve situationally over time? That if I delay a week, is someone going to come back and say, hey, of those 7 things I told you last week, 4 of them are now irrelevant. Don't focus on those at all. And if you jumped right off the bat, maybe you would have invested all this time and effort into those 4 things. And now all that is wasted time and effort. So if it's a situation where the context is going to change over time, or it requires a lot of creativity and innovation, from the research that I've found, those are the most ideal situations. And then I think, again, going back to the self-honesty of, do I already have issues with non-productive procrastination? And if you do, then again, slippery slope might not be the ideal thing to put that off, especially if you think reasonably that you can get started on it sooner.
No, that's great. Thank you so much for this conversation. I think we got a better idea what to do and what benefits we can get out of procrastination. And at the same time, when you say the word procrastination, it just has this negative connotation, but at the same time, learning how to utilize it in the best way to benefit you on a daily basis, I think is a good look. And like I say, I use this Pomodoro effect. I think that helps me kind of mentally be able to task in and out of things, you know. I have my little video game I like to play, you know. And I think while I'm zoned out is when I have my best ideas.
Exactly.
My best thoughts pop.
And again, it's that idea that you're doing something lower cognitive in the foreground. It's still enjoyable and fun, but it's allowing, you know, your brain to focus on that bigger thing in the background.
Right.
So the other huge piece to that too is like the communication aspect as well. And I was just jogged, you know, my memory was jogged from you saying the whole idea you know, behind what you're doing in the first place, but the idea of communicating to other people, because societally, you know, we have all these negative ideas surrounding procrastination. But if you're going to strategically procrastinate, make sure you're talking to the correct people. Make sure you understand the situation and the people you're working with allow for it.
Right.
You don't want to, and someone had this comment during my lunch and learn. I thought this was great. And I was really glad someone brought this up, that they said, make sure that the situation you're in allows for it, that you don't want to be, you know, step 3 in a 7-person process. And by your delay, you're now holding up everybody behind you and you know, hurting other people in the process. It's going to be bad for morale. People are going to resent that. So make sure just the situation, the group of people, and the culture that you're working in allow for it. And then if you are going to strategically procrastinate, always make sure you're communicating that to people and say, hey, I'm not being irresponsible right now. And you can even just say it as simply as like, I need time to think it over. I'm going to sleep on it, something like that.
Yeah, that's a good look. So I have this thing I call this or that, that just helps our audience get to know you a little bit better. So I'm just going to throw some questions at you, this or that.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
Cider or beer?
That's a hard one seasonally because we're in fall right now. I'm still going to go beer though.
Beer?
Yeah, I'm still going to. I love a good cider, but beer is just all year round, you know, drinkable in so many different varieties.
Especially this year, well, every time around this time of year, this is October if you're watching this, at any time. But they have like the pumpkin flavors and all those things that come
the
out.
Oktoberfest are always really good.
Yeah. Although in the summertime, they were going off on pickles. For some reason, like there was a whole pickle, not beer. Oh, okay. But
it's like I missed that craze.
A pickle beer would be kind of strange. I think.
I'm sure they have it.
But yeah, probably. But like, I just noticed so many fried pickles and pickle flavors and all this all summer.
I can get on board with that though.
Yeah, I'm down for pickles for sure. Books or movies?
I love both, but anybody that knows me would say that I'm a movie guy. I almost went to film school for college. Nice. Before I ended up going for international relations and political science for my degree. I was really, really tempted before that, but I wanted to go to film school, grew up around movies my whole life. And to this day, it's still like, I love the movie theater experience, you know, just going and seeing something on the big screen and everything from the cinematography to the writing, all of that. So nice. I do love to read as well. And obviously huge value in books, but for enjoyment, especially movies.
Let's give you one more.
All right.
How about that? Let's go with, let me see. What do I got here?
Give me a tough one.
Okay, tough. Let's see. I don't know how tough this one is. Okay. Mountains or beach?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that one, I know for some people that can be difficult. For me, mountains though.
Yeah.
I, you know, like I mentioned at the beginning, I was stationed in Florida for over 5 years. And it was great at first, but after a while, it was just kind of like, man, there's not a lot of trees. There's like no terrain or anything. Right. And you know, especially growing up in North Central PA, like I love my mountains, going out, you know, doing day hikes, camping, that kind of thing.
Right.
So that's definitely it. But I do love a good beach vacation too, though. There's no substitute for that, especially after a cold winter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. So this was a great conversation. Thanks so much for your time and your research into the subject matter as well, too.
Absolutely.
Remember, guys, go to Shots from Winchester on YouTube if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you may be listening to a podcast. Check us out on our YouTube channel so you can see the video and if we have any content in the video that you can see as well. So make sure you give us a like and subscribe. Andrew, do you have anything you want to say to anybody while you have an opportunity here? Shout out to anybody or anything like that?
I guess not so much a shout out, but again, just going back to the subject matter of just considering situations, and if it's something that, you know, might make you a little bit of, you know, give you a little bit of discomfort considering something, maybe try it out once or twice and you might be surprised with, you know, what you find out of it. Or maybe even better, you find out it's a work habit that especially doesn't work for you. So,
right.
But yeah, just give it a shot and experiment. You never know what you might find out.
Awesome. That's good advice. See you guys next week.